And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today we are looking at NFL draft prospects that the Washington Commanders might select in this upcoming NFL draft. Today we are looking at an article that is on Commanders Wire if you want to take a look at this. And so within this article, it mentions Matt Miller of ESPN, and he is predicting that the Commanders will select James Pierce Jr., an edge rusher out of Tennessee, with the 29th overall pick. And then the Washington Commanders would come back in the second round and select wide receiver Trey Harris of Ole Miss. And so let's start with James Pierce Jr. and just talking about the strengths and weaknesses here and what James Pierce Jr. perhaps could bring to the Commanders and if it makes sense. And so one of the things that he talks about is that he is a legitimate speed rusher that really burst off the snap, led him to 17.5 sacks, 92 pressures in the past 2 seasons combined. But the weakness here is that he needs to build up his lower body to better hold off in the run game. And he's saying that he has a similar profile to Eagles' Nolan Smith Jr. and could be that type of early impact player. And so does it make sense for James Pierce Jr. and the Washington Commanders? And so, yeah, I think so, because defensively, the Washington Commanders absolutely need some help in the run game and also to just generating some natural pressure. One of the things that I love about James Pierce Jr., which is mentioned, is that he has speed. I mean, because it looks like initially once the football is snapped, it's like James Pierce Jr. is in a track meet because he gets there very fast and in a hurry. So I love that about him. And if he doesn't get to the ball carrier or he doesn't get to the quarterback, he at least is going to be able to use that speed to maybe help set the edge, also get into a run gap and stop a runner before they start to get into their next level or get to the second level. I think a lot of times with our defense, it was about beating the running back to the spot, making sure that we were in our appropriate run lanes and things like that. And so James Pierce Jr. makes a lot of sense here. And I like the fact that he is 6'5", 243. And really another thing that jumps off the tape is that with his length at 6'5", I thought that he was able to maybe take that wingspan and make a lot of plays. It reminded me a lot of a player that used to play for Washington back in the day in Jason Taylor. He played our defensive end for us back in the day, and he also too played for the Miami Dolphins, and so that was a very good player. I think that you can see a little bit of the similarities there, and I think that maybe leads to some of the weaknesses that I saw here on NFL.com is because he has that type of length. Sometimes for him to kind of bend down, break, get to the tackle point, sometimes he lets maybe sacks kind of slip out of his hand that way. And that just comes down to just being able to, just kind of utilize, your size, get down low, and then drive through those tackles and things like that. And so that's some of the things that he's going to have to work on. And I think any player that's coming out, I don't care if they're a wide receiver, quarterback, defensive end, offensive lineman, you're going to have to get the strength and adjust to the pro game. And so that's something he definitely has to work on. But I do think that does make some sense. Wouldn't mind the Washington Commanders taking him. I think another player that maybe they could take at the edge is maybe a guy like Mykel Williams out of Georgia. I think that maybe he's a little bit more of a project as far as, just trying to get him, kind of developed and things like that. But I think he's certainly a player that can make some plays for you. One of the things that I loved about his tape is just that he was able to just really establish himself. He will not be pushed around in the line of scrimmage. And so I think you need that, especially when it comes to filling these run gaps and things like that. And I also thought, too, with his level of physicality in the trenches, and just setting the edge. But I think he's also going to be good as far as like kind of knocking the football away. I thought I saw that a couple times in his tape. And we need somebody that can come in, help us flip the field, help us maybe generate some turnovers, make it easier for our offense, but then put more pressure onto the opposing defense because we have a short field. So maybe he's another player that maybe the Washington Commanders could take a chance on. Again, I think that any of these players, it's going to be a real project when you get them into your program. But, hopefully you scouted them enough. You feel like that once you get them under your coaching, you're going to be able to really get the most out of that player. I think both of those players maybe make a lot of sense there at pick 29 if you want to go the defensive route. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it also, too, maybe the Washington Commanders certainly go defense if they move on from Jonathan Allen. I think that is definitely on the table at pick 29. And so next up, we want to look at the next player in this mock draft that he has the Washington Commanders maybe taking a look at, or actually selecting, I should say. And that's Trey Harris, wide receiver, Ole Miss. And so talking about the fact that he's 6'3", 210, 63 passes caught, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. He excels in the underneath routes and wins in contested situations. And so one of the things that I see out of Trey Harris, and it reminds me a lot of DK Metcalf. Ironically, I think that they went to the same school, Ole Miss. And so I think that with his big body frame, I think he is going to be able to kind of win as far as maybe boxing out a lot of cornerbacks and things like that. So I do like that. Really, you pair that with Jaden Daniels working off of Terry McLaurin. I think that is something that, is certainly going to be a good combination, especially if he's working the middle of the field and things like that. So another thing that I liked about him, was just, again, his ability to, I think, really create or actually come up with footballs in contested areas. Like that is something that, you're not going to necessarily be able to make the most perfect throws on the run and stuff like that. And he would be able to, I think, kind of really take those passes and I think really maximize those things for us. And we know the wide receiver position is something the Washington Commanders really need to get at. I would say that when I initially see him, I could see him more like a player that I've said the DK Metcalf. I do see that there could be maybe some comparisons like a Michael Thompson. I do see something like that, or Michael Thomas, I should say, of the Saints. I think you could see that in comparison. Doesn't necessarily have a lot of breakaway speed, but if you're looking for a player that's just going to get big for you, then he's your guy. I think if the Washington Commanders wanted to go maybe with a little bit more speed, maybe some players that could be a little bit more, I think, dynamic at that position, at the wide receiver position in round 2. I like, the young man out of Texas. I think that he can definitely make it happen, and that's Matthew Golden. I would like him. I think that he's a player that when I looked at his tape at 6 feet, 195, look, man, he has got great speed bursts. I think he's terrific as far as keeping the defense on their heels, as far as making his speeds kind of vary and stuff like that when he's coming off the line. And also, too, he competes when it comes down to, competing for the football and things like that. So he's great at that with the body control and stuff like that. So this is a player that I think can really benefit the Washington Commanders. He's a player I would take. Another player that maybe I would take if we're looking at the wide receiver position, maybe Jalen Royals. Out of Utah State. I think that maybe he's a terrific player that you take. Reminds me a lot of Brandon Cooks, when he played for the Saints, how dynamic he was. And also, too, he had some good years with the Patriots as well. And he does remind you a little bit of a Jaden Reed, but he's got a 4.3 type of speed. And so with him, I see a player that can catch maybe a 4 or 5 yard pass and take it for 30 yards. That's what I love about him. And so definitely would like a player that can really be a home run hitter for you alongside of Terry McLaurin. And so let me know in the comments what you think about some of these players. Do you think the Washington Commanders go offense in the first round? Do you think that they go defense in the first round? Let me know what you're thinking there. And out of these players that we talked about, do you see maybe the Washington Commanders? Yeah, they could select these players. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. And as we always say, we'll be talking some more Washington Commanders football, free agents, draft prospects, some new hires, things like that. But till the next one, go Commanders, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.